Are the Connecticut Sun rebuilding? The team's general manager says no, and the next Connecticut Sun beat reporter, Jacqueline LeBlanc, takes me through the team's recent trades, what they mean for the team, and what's still left on the Sun's free agency to-do list. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
Ogunbowale for the win.
Good! You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Hello and happy Friday. You are locked on to women's basketball. I'm Natalie Heavren, and I'm a features writer and the Atlantic 10 beat reporter for The Next. Thanks for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On Women's Basketball is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. Today, we'll be breaking down why the Connecticut Sun are not rebuilding, why they made the trades they made, how they're building around Alyssa Thomas and Bri Jones, and what's left on the team's free agency to-do list. Joining me today is the next Connecticut Sun beat writer, Jacqueline LeBlanc. So to start off, this week, the Sun finalized a three-team trade that sent 2021 MVP Jonquil Jones to the New York Liberty, and then traded Jasmine Thomas, the team's captain and starting point guard since 2015, to the Los Angeles Sparks. And then on Tuesday, Jacqueline, you sat down with Connecticut Sun general manager Darius Taylor, and he told you some of the things I've been seeing and reading are that people think we're rebuilding. We're not. Taking this one trade at a time, do you think that trading Jonquil Jones was the right move for the Sun, and why?
Yeah, so obviously a lot has happened in the last week for the Connecticut Sun. Jonquil Jones, rightfully so, definitely headlines, all of that trade news. So Jonquil Jones ended up getting traded for Rebecca Allen, the number 6 pick from the New York Liberty, and Ty Harris from the Dallas Wings. I don't think it's the return you get for an MVP player like Jonquil Jones, but just with how the league is structured and cap space and whatnot, when an MVP says she wants out and she has a specific destination she wants to go to, it's it kind of seemed like the only move the Sun really had. Darius said it better to get, something for Jonquil Jones rather than having her, sit out the season or possibly walk in free agency next year. The Jonquil Jones trade definitely seemed like it had been looming for a while, that, both Jonquil and the management for the Sun kind of came to a mutual understanding that it was best for both teams to move on. Darius Taylor said this was apparent after the postseason, but also had kind of been looming for possibly the last year or even the last 2 years. So I think it was an impending move that was eventually going to happen. The return is not necessarily the return I think you would see for an MVP player in the NBA, but it seemed like the Sun really prioritized their organization and where they're moving forward, and getting something back for Jonquil was definitely a high priority. And Darius seemed pretty satisfied with what they were able to get, and both Beck Allen and Ty Harris, because that guard spot is obviously a need. They ended up sending out their number 10 pick, but they were able to get that number 6 pick in the draft. So a little bit better draft capital. But yeah, I think it was the right move because they had to do it.
And you mentioned that the trade could kind of be seen coming. And in your story, you mentioned a specific comment from Stephanie White's introductory press conference in your story. Could you tell me more about it?
Yeah, so at Stephanie White's introductory press conference back in late November when she was first hired, it was a comment that stuck out to me and definitely stuck out to a lot of other people in the media, I think. There was at one point during the press conference where Steph White was asked about coaching someone like Tamika Catchings, an MVP who she had coached in the Indiana Fever when she was last in the WNBA. And she talked a lot about, how great it is to have an MVP like Tamika on your team. She's a generational player. She's got that grit. She's got that energy. She's an all-around player. And she said Connecticut has a similar player. And, Connecticut does have an MVP. So that might be who you think she would name drop. But then she ended up comparing Alyssa Thomas to Tamika Catchings. Alyssa Thomas is an MVP candidate in her own right. I don't think it's fair to take anything away from what she does. And, she's definitely been the team's engine. She's definitely very gritty. But when you also have an actual MVP, someone who's actually won the award on your team, I think that definitely sticks out. And Jonquil Jones was never name dropped during that press conference, at least in Stephanie White's remarks to the public in that media presser. Team president Jennifer Rosati also had a chance to kind of talk about Jonquil Jones. Our Howard Megdal asked her a question specifically about JJ, and Rosati kind of deflected in that own comment, saying, it's a long time before, Stephanie decides what she's going to run, how she kind of wants this team to go, and kind of veered the conversation in that direction versus actually addressing Jonquil Jones. So the writing may have been on the wall there. According to Darius, it was pretty clear after the postseason. So at that point, it probably was a little clear. But yeah, looking back now that Jonquil is no longer on the team, knowing that Jonquil specifically requested a trade to move on from her career, I think that's very apparent. And I also think it's really interesting that, Darius said this may have been looming for a little bit longer than people might have expected, but Jonquil Jones was a free agent last season. She was a free agent last season. She took a discount from the Supermax that she is worth to stay with the Connecticut Sun. And she did that because she said she had unfinished business. She took that discount, talked about how all the sacrifices this team has made to be here and be in this position that they were in the finals in September. But also, she felt like she had unfinished business in Connecticut, and now that book is closed a year later. So very interesting to see how all that went down.
And moving on to the other trade, which you talked a little bit about, but based on your knowledge of the team and your conversation with Darius Taylor, why did the team trade Jasmine Thomas?
Yeah, so Jasmine Thomas, obviously a big part of this team's core and their success over the last couple of years. She's been with the team since 2015. She's their captain. She's their point guard. She is their vocal leader and, kind of the voice of this team. But she's also coming off her injury from last season, missing most of that season, unfortunately. She was this upcoming season would have been her last year on her current contract. She was making, according to her hoop stats, $190,000. So this move really kind of seemed to be more about clearing cap space and also getting younger. The Sun did get 3 players back who are very young and kind of building toward the future. So I think it was a combination of, getting some talented players who are young on their rookie contracts, have the potential, but may not have had the opportunity in the last couple seasons to kind of develop. But they might have that opportunity here on the Sun. And then also clearing cap space. Darius Taylor made it clear to me that they're definitely going after some highly sought after free agents, some big free agents. So, where the Sun are right now, I don't think they're going to end there with free agency. They definitely plan to make some moves. So clearing cap space definitely indicates that they're trying to go after someone. So I'm very interested to see who that ends up being.
And then based off of these moves, why don't you think the Sun are in rebuilding mode?
Right. So like you had referenced earlier in the pod, Darius Taylor wanted to make it very clear that the Sun are not rebuilding. They do not view it that way. When you trade someone like an MVP, signs may indicate that a team is going towards rebuilding, but the Sun believe they're contenders. And I think, it would be fair to judge them after free agency is over to see kind of where their new team stands and what they kind of look like, and then evaluate then whether or not it'll end up being a rebuild. But, to Connecticut's point, they also have 2 players in Alyssa Thomas and most likely Brianna Jones, who is a unrestricted free agent right now, but assumed to be back on the team from my conversation with Darius. So building around those two players, in an 8-team playoff league, I think, Alyssa Thomas, she is a potential MVP candidate herself. She ended last season as a triple-double machine. So we are constantly, and that's coming off an injury, a season of injury. So Alyssa Thomas is constantly evolving. I think she's going to continue to evolve. I think we have not seen the final form of Alyssa Thomas. So I think when you have a player like AT, you have a player like Bri Jones, who has showed the work she's put in, who has showed, what she means to this team and what she can possibly do. I think that, at the very least could get you into the playoffs. I don't think that makes them a lottery team at any needs. I think considering rebuilding would probably put them in that lottery conversation if they are going to go that direction. But I think Alyssa Thomas can definitely get you places. So they may not be a perennial contender like they have been over the last couple of years. They may not be in that WNBA finals conversation once the season starts. But I don't think we can discount Alyssa Thomas. When Alyssa Thomas is on your team, I definitely don't think they're in that lottery bucket. So we'll see, the moves they make for the rest of free agency will definitely tell where they kind of land in the WNBA hierarchy. But like I said, I think it all really depends on free agency and the pieces they want to put around Alyssa Thomas and being able to maximize her skill sets and also Brianna Jones' skill set.
Coming up next, we'll discuss how the Sun aren't rebuilding, as we just touched upon, but rather building around Alyssa Thomas and Bri Jones. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeting tools that go beyond resume data by using insights from your job post, company, and their 875 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates. Identify the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and connect with them fast and for free. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job qualifications all on one platform. Hiring the right team member using LinkedIn Jobs is a great way to get a head start on achieving your 2023 goals and beyond. That's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So Jacqueline, in this story that went live earlier this week, you talked about how the biggest question for the Sun heading into this offseason was, would the team be able to keep Bri Jones, who had a breakout season in 2020 and has shown her value as a center in this league for the last 3 seasons? So with the moves they made earlier this week, do you think the Sun will be able to keep Bri Jones? And from your conversations with Darius Taylor, I'm assuming the answer to that is yes.
Right. So I think, going back to the Jonquil Jones trade, I think a positive to that is Jonquil Jones was on a core contract, so the Sun no longer have anyone on that core designation. So they'll likely be able to use that for Brianna Jones. So if you lose Jonquil Jones, obviously a huge loss. Losing Brianna Jones would make that even worse. So that's definitely, Darius said that's definitely a big priority, is being able to keep Bri Jones in Connecticut and building around her and Alyssa Thomas. I asked him, because Jonquil Jones is gone and they have a free core spot, I asked him if they plan on using that for Bri Jones. He said at the time the team is still kind of going through weighing their options and what they can do. But he said it was likely that they would be able to core Bri Jones. We're recording on Friday. Today's the deadline for teams to offer that core designation. So haven't seen anything come through there yet, but I would assume it's very likely that they use that core. And, kind of the importance of that is locking her in and not being able to have any other teams negotiate with her, which I'm sure Bri Jones and the other teams in the league had a very long wish list that must have included Bri. So that was a really big part of kind of the setback for trading and getting rid of Jonquil Jones. She is really valuable to this team, and they really want to keep her. Darius talked about how she has continued to develop herself over the last couple of years. We've seen her get better and better, even, going to the bench this year after 2 seasons as a starter in 2020 and 21. She was still productive as ever. She is one of the best offensive rebounders in the entire league. Darius has talked about how you can see the fruits of her labor. You can see her get better. You can see her work on their game. She's committed to that. She's committed to her body. She's committed to progressing, and I feel like she might be on a Jonquil Jones award trifecta path herself. Jonquil Jones, early in her Sun career, she, had an opportunity similar to Bri to be inserted into the starting lineup. And when she had that opportunity, she earned a Most Improved Player award. JJ went back to the bench and was still able to produce and earned a 6th Person of the Year award. Bri Jones has done the same thing. Most Improved Player, took what she learned, still continued it off the bench. Obviously, that third award that JJ won was the MVP award. So we'll see how Bri does there. But I think it's possible. She definitely has the potential, and the team definitely believes in her, and they think she's a big part of, where they can go. And, she's a big part of them, not rebuilding and still being able to possibly contend with the team.
And then how do you see Bri Jones's role changing this season with the absence of Jonquil Jones?
Right. So obviously she'll have more playing time if she does end up on the Sun. She played her and Jonquil split time last year at that 5 spot mostly. They had their offensive issues, not always being able to get on the court at the same time, and in pivotal moments at the end of the game have been an issue. So I think we'll definitely see Bri Jones playing time increase, and that is, all the better for the Sun. Bri Jones should have plenty of space to work in the post now that it's not super crowded. That should fix their spacing issues. But Bri Jones is going to continue to get better, I think, especially with that playing time and the opportunities she gets. One thing I want to mention that I would love to see if this actually comes to fruition in Bri Jones's career is a 3-point shot and adding that to her game. That was a big part of Jonquil Jones's game, and the Sun have been very open about wanting to play, with more 3-point shooting, more guard-oriented play, more spacing, more tempo. And they need, shooters to do that. Stephanie White a couple months ago in her presser referenced, maybe 4-out, 5-out basketball. Jonquil Jones fits that mold better than Bri Jones does. So, how is the coaching staff going to kind of push Bri to add that to her bag? Last season, she talked a lot to the media about how that is, like, she's aware that's something she wants to add to her game. You would see her take those shots in practice. You would see her take those 3-point shots, in warm-ups before games, but it just never came to fruition. So Darius said, he wants 3-point shooters on this team, but it's not going to be limited to just guards. He wants, his posts and everyone on the team to be able to add a 3-point shooting, and that's something that's really important to Stephanie White and her staff. So I'd be interested to see if that actually becomes a piece of Bri Jones's game, because it hasn't been, and if it does, that sounds like a pretty scary evolved Brianna Jones. So that might be a while out, but I think it is interesting to note, especially if the Sun are going to be in this up-tempo 3-point shooting system.
And then you talked about Alyssa Thomas a little bit earlier, but how do the trades impact her? She's long since been called the engine of the team. And how do you see her role changing at all this season?
Yeah, so, Alyssa will obviously have more space, just like Bri, with JJ not on the floor anymore. AT is super versatile. Her game is very well balanced, and that's something the team really wants. So, I know she played point guard a few times last season. I'd be interested to see if that, if she continues to be a big facilitator, if the Sun are able to surround Alyssa Thomas with a bunch of shooters. It seems like it's very possible. She just has so much space to work with, and she's so versatile and so good at what she does. The triple doubles from last season, just casually becoming the league's triple double career leader is also a big, evolution of her game. So I think Alyssa will also get more playing time. She'll probably benefit from that as well. But if they're able to find, like they've been talking about, if they're able to surround Alyssa with shooters, if they're able to find those pieces that maximize Alyssa's skill set, she'll be able to run to the ball and then run to the court, run to the basket, and then easily pass out for three, or, someone who's going to be able to help create space for her. She's going to become just as important. So, they said that they're definitely interested in building around Alyssa Thomas and Bri Jones. This is kind of their team now. It's already kind of been Alyssa's team. So I'm excited to see what happens there.
Coming up next, we'll discuss what the players that Connecticut received in their 2 trades bring to the team and what's left on the team's free agency to-do list. Today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Are you looking for a delicious treat that is still loaded with protein? Then you have to try Built Bar. We at Locked On Women's Basketball love Built Bar, especially because they are both healthy and tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious, you won't even think that they're good for you. But what makes Built Bars so good? For starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Yes, real chocolate, and who doesn't love chocolate? And they also come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. And I'm not sure how Built Bar does it, but the bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they have 4 grams of sugar with 17 grams of protein. And now you don't have to wait around to get a box. You can buy them at built.com and have them shipped to you if you don't want to get off your couch. But you can also go get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. But if you want them in a little bit larger quantity, or if you're just close to a Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box filled with hit flavors like brownie batter and churro. You can thank me later. So, Jacqueline, what was Darius Taylor looking to bring in the Suns trades?
Right. So I think
you mentioned.
Sorry, go ahead, Natalie.
Oh, I was just going to say, you mentioned in your story 3-point shooting, and you mentioned earlier today youth. Were those his 2 goals?
Yeah, I think those are definitely the 2 biggest things. The Sun have been very open about their 3-point shooting need. They definitely could have benefited from that last year. It's definitely high on their priority list. But balancing the team out with a little bit more youth was also really important to the team. So, they brought in a veteran like Rebecca Allen who fills in that shooting piece. But they also brought in, 3 really young players from LA and Olivia Nelson-Adota and Jasmine Walker, and then the rights to Kiana Smith. The Sun got a lot younger. I kind of want to recap for everyone listening what the Sun's roster looks like as of right now, because it's definitely been shaken up a little bit. So, they still have DeWanna Bonner, they have Alyssa Thomas, they brought in Rebecca Allen and Ty Harris. Those right now, according to Hoop Stats, they're all on protected contracts. And then they also brought in Jasmine Walker, Olivia Nelson-Adota, and then Nia Clouden and Dejanay Carrington from last year are both still signed for this year. So with that, they've offered qualifying offers to Natisha Heidemann and Joyner Holmes. And then they also brought in Kiana Smith from LA. She's a reserved free agent this year. They'll keep her rights. She won't be playing this year because of injury. And then last year they have Kiki Smith, who was drafted in the 3rd round from Florida. She went through an injury last year herself. So they have her rights. She could be someone they bring in for camp as well. So I think youth, like we said, is definitely a big part of that. I asked Darius kind of about the development and how the new staff is going to be prioritizing that piece. Because, over the last couple of years, Sun veterans have gotten a lot of playing time, and the bench really hasn't seen much playing time. Not too many opportunities for young rookies to develop unless they're actually thrown into opportunities like a Bri Jones was in 2020, or even JJ way back when. Natisha Heidemann, even had that opportunity to be thrown into the starting lineup. So he said development is definitely important. Balancing the team is definitely important. He said, being successful is going to require talent, but it's also going to require talent, leadership, experience, but it's also going to require youth. They are really looking for a balanced team, and teams they're, adamant about contending now, but they also still want to be successful in the future. So adding youth was a really important part of these trades that came about this week. And then, kind of maneuvering cap space. Darius Taylor, in his own introductory press conference back in December, he mentioned that, cap space is a puzzle, and the Sun are going to have to do some maneuvering to be able to go after some big free agents. So Darius echoed that same thing this week. It was really important to make these moves before free agency, so the Sun do have the flexibility and the opportunities to go after some highly sought after free agents, some big free agents. So they're definitely going after a few people. He mentioned that they're going after a key forward, and then they're also going after some guards, and just said, a couple times that they're highly sought after big free agents. So excited to see, who they end up going after. But yeah, they're definitely looking for a few more people to move around on this team.
And, you mentioned this earlier, but we've talked a lot about two different trades. So just to clarify for their listeners, in the trade that sent Jonquil Jones to the Liberty, the Sun received the number 6 pick in the 2023 WNBA draft and guard forward Rebecca Allen from the New York Liberty and guard Taisha Harris from the Dallas Wings. What do Allen and Harris bring to the Sun?
Right. So Rebecca Allen, I think, is a really big addition for the Sun. She kind of, if she, she did have an injury in the World Cup back in October. Darius didn't have an injury update or anything like that, but he didn't seem too concerned about her missing time at the beginning of the season. If she's healthy and she's able to do what the Sun need her to do, I think she'll be a really good addition to this team. She's a perimeter shooter, which, obviously fills that biggest need that they have. She can shoot the ball, but she's also really long. She's really rangy. She's really versatile, which the Sun staff really like. She's able to play a couple different positions and definitely fits in that versatility bucket and helping the team be a little bit more balanced. He really likes her defense, obviously. Just imagining, a defensive Rebecca Allen on the court at the same time as Alyssa Thomas could be a scary situation for some opponents. But, obviously her shooting is a big need. Her, defense is a real big need, her versatility. And then, of course, Jackie Powell over at our New York Liberty beat has covered Beck Allen's career extensively. And I've talked to her a few times about just what Beck brings to the team. And she's going to be a really good leader for the team. Jackie's talked about how she's not necessarily a vocal leader, but she sets the example. And with adding more youth to the team, adding more people, getting rid of or trading away a Jasmine Thomas who had that leadership present and that veteran presence, adding in a Rebecca Allen to a really young backcourt now, I think is going to be really important. So again, the injury is still kind of a mystery, and, we don't have a status on kind of how that's going, but assuming that's all fine, I think she definitely has an opportunity to make an immediate impact for this team, which is what they need.
And then, Ty Harris, does she help fill in the gap a little bit in what the team lost in sending Jasmine Thomas to the Sparks?
Yeah, I think so. So obviously, Ty was in Dallas for the last 3 seasons, and Dallas already had a very crowded backcourt at the time. So her opportunities and her minutes and her playing time wasn't always super consistent. So Darius said that, throughout her career, Ty has definitely shown flashes of what she can do handling the ball, but that she also is really talented off the ball. She can shoot if she needs to shoot. She has the potential to be a combo guard if they need her to be a combo guard. But obviously they had a point guard need. It's even more apparent now that Jasmine Thomas is no longer here. So being able to be a backup point guard, assuming they get another point guard in to start for them, that will be important. And then I also want to point out that Ty Harris is on a protected deal. So obviously, unless they trade her away, they can't cut her or anything like that. Her contract is a little bit higher than some of the other rookie contracts that people are on. So I think the Sun are really high on Ty Harris's potential and what she can do here. And I think the most important piece is that she'll have the opportunity to actually, show people what she can do. And Darius even said that he thinks Ty Harris's time in Connecticut will definitely be more fruitful than it was in Dallas. So she definitely fills a big need in point guard.
And then In that trade that sent Jasmine Thomas and the number 10 pick to the Sparks, the Sun received Jasmine Walker, Olivia Nelson-Ododa, and the rights to Kiana Smith. What do those players bring to the Sun? It maybe wasn't what some people were expecting to see, especially for the captain and the number 10 pick in the draft.
Right. I think Nelson-Ododa will be a very interesting addition to this team if she does end up, on the final team in May. They seem very high on her potential. So obviously, she was a rookie last year, but she definitely had some good bursts where she definitely showed, a very high ceiling in what she can do. She's a good rebounder. She's rangy. There were a couple of times where she had I think there was one game where she had 5 blocks a game or something. She's definitely shown spurts of what she's able to do. And the Sun are really high on her potential. It's really important for them to have a backup big, but I think the even more valuable piece is having that backup big learn from both Alyssa Thomas and Brianna Jones. So Taylor was definitely really, really high on Nelson-Ododa's potential and her ceiling. She is a UConn alum, so maybe that kind of bring some fan interest into the team as well. But I think Nelson-Ododa will be a really interesting addition to this team and see how she develops under Bri Jones and Alyssa Thomas.
And then you touched on it a little bit earlier, but is there anything else on the Sun's to-do list before free agency is over? And it really hasn't even begun. I don't believe that teams can start signing players until February 1st. So we still have a long way to go. So what's left on their to-do list?
Right. So obviously, I think the number one priority is getting Bri Jones' contract settled. We assume she's going to be cored. With that core comes a supermax qualifying offer, basically a 1-year contract. So she could accept that 1-year supermax, or she could negotiate a different deal with the team. Maybe that, if she's able to do that, maybe that gives the Sun a little bit more cap space to go after some of these big free agents that they're wanting to go after. But breaking down their needs by positions and the different roles they're trying to fill. The first one is they definitely need a 2-guard. Courtney Williams was their 2-guard last year. Sounds like they're still who is an unrestricted free agent this year. It sounds like they're continuing to talk with Courtney, so it's a possibility that she could be back. But a 2-guard is definitely, that most important need. A 2-guard who's able to shoot, and a 2-guard who's able to shoot threes is probably their big wish list, is being able to fill that role and getting someone who's a very consistent shooter. Like I said, they also have a qualifying offer to Natisha Heidemann, and Taylor said that Heidemann fits into this new system that White wants to run perfectly. And having continuity is important for a team, especially when they have a new coaching staff, when they have a new front office. So Williams and Heidemann definitely, fill that shooting role and then also provide that continuity. So a 2-guard, definitely the big need. He also said they're looking to bring in an impact forward or an impact post player, and then another veteran guard. They definitely want to bring in more veteran experience because the team is really young right now. But I would expect them to add another veteran. I would expect them to add probably a veteran point guard is someone who they're going to go after. Like I said, that 2-guard, and then someone who can be an impact post player, probably off the bench with Bri Jones and Alyssa Thomas there. But yes, I thought it was interesting when I asked him about kind of the free agents he was going after. He just kept saying, we have some very highly sought after free agents who we're going to have some meetings with. And he said they're going after a key forward and as well as guards. So I thought that was interesting that he would always say key forward before guards, since guards is that obvious need. But yeah, we'll see how it ends up going. But they're definitely looking for more veteran experience to add this team. Definitely kind of continuing to bolster the backcourt before the season starts, and then possibly another post player to add to the Bri Jones, Alyssa Thomas rotation.
No matter what happens, I know you'll have us covered, and I'm sure you'll be back on Locked On Women's Basketball to tell us all about what happened. So thank you for joining me today, Jacqueline. Where can the people find you and your work?
Right. So obviously you guys can find me at thenexthoops.com as well as every other beat writer for the WNBA. We're all going to be super busy over this next couple of weeks with free agency and the chaos that kind of ensues. And then you can also find me on Twitter at JackDLeb. It's JACQDLEB.
Thanks for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen today. Make sure to tune back in tomorrow to hear more from Hunter, Joshua, and Em, and I always learn so much from them. Now, make your second listen Game to Game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.